Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And today I have a gentleman joining us by the name of Jonathan Broadbent. And I met Jonathan through a conversation on an X space, formerly known as Twitter. I always feel like I'm talking about Prince and the revolution when I'm formerly known as Twitter. But anyway, I met him on an X space. We were chatting on there and I invited him to come on because I think he has some very, very good information to share with everyone. So do me a favor and share this out. Let's get a bunch of eyeballs in here, a bunch of great people watching. Share this out and stay with us. I'll be right back with Jonathan Broadbent. Okay, we're back. Let me bring Jonathan on. Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Glad to be here, Ken.
Great to have you on. So we were having a conversation, I believe, that we met through, was it Auntie Kami?
I think it was through Anti-Commie. It might have been one of the AssembleX spaces. I'm one of the leads of Ohio AssembleX. Anti-Commie has been a frequent guest there.
She is an amazing lady. So let's talk about, this show is all about, I started it 5.5 years ago, 560 some episodes in now. And it's all about having a breakthrough in life and in business. And at the time I was stuck, I think, in life. And I thought, if I just interview enough people, find out how they got unstuck, and it worked. So Jonathan, start with telling everybody where you were born and raised.
Well, I was born and raised a little bit of kind of a split between Cleveland, Ohio, and St. Pete, Florida. So actually a suburb of Cleveland. I like to point back to the Drew Carey show. If anybody's familiar with Drew Carey, on his television program, he used to make fun of one of the suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio, called Shaker Heights. That's actually where I was born and raised, and it is sort of well-deserved. It was kind of a snobby, old blue blood, highly affluent community outside of Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I was half raised, and the other half was on the beach in St. Pete, Florida.
St. Pete's a nice area. Real nice area.
Yep.
So was it a split family, or what, or you just had vacation home there? How did that work?
Well, it was mom and dad split up when I was a kid, and mom moved to be near her mom and dad, my grandparents, who had retired to North Reddington Beach. And she made the move, just, not knowing where to land after the divorce. That was 79. Hard to believe it was that many years ago. But she moved us kids down to Florida. And it's funny, I've got to interject this because one of the things that I hope to get to during our conversation is a role that I recently served on Protect Ohio Children, which was fighting for K through 12 education. And interestingly, this factors in after my folks split up. Mom got custody. We moved down to Florida. We did 1 year in Florida public schools, and they were deemed to be among the worst in the country. So we moved back to Shaker Heights for schools. I finished out K through 12 and went on to college from there. But since then, it's kind of flipped, and Florida is actually doing great things in education. So timing is everything. I probably would have spent a lot more years and, more importantly, winters in Florida if the education system had been better in the 70s.
Yeah. It sounds like we're very close in age. So I graduated, or I didn't even graduate high school, if I'm just being honest here. 86 is the year I would have graduated had I not walked out in 86. That's a long story we won't get into. But I've had a lot of college graduates work for me over the years, so I think I made up for it somehow. But
Awesome.
yeah. So where did you end up graduating then? From Shaker Heights?
I did. I'm a graduate of
Okay.
Shaker Heights High School, 89.
Okay.
And similar fashion, I actually tried to walk out in 87. I was one of those, I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. I was so rambunctious and rebellious. I was
Yeah.
constantly in trouble my entire childhood. I was put in the special school. I just couldn't pay attention. I couldn't focus, but I got pretty good grades in spite of just being kind of the kid that bounced off the walls. I
Yeah.
tried to walk out, and it was actually my older brother that forced me. He kind of put his foot down and was like, "Nope, you're not doing that. You're not going to just lounge and mooch off of mom. Get back in there and finish the thing out." So that's really the main reason that somebody like me, who was a rabble rouser, was forced to finish my K through 12.
Yeah, mine was, they said you didn't get a biology credit in 10th grade. And I had aced trigonometry, analytic geometry, calculus, algebra, advanced I aced it. Taking all these college prep courses. They said you didn't get biology in 10th grade. And I said, yeah, I hated that class. And they're like, well, you need that to graduate. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. And so they wouldn't negotiate with me. And it was 3 months or 4 months before graduation. And I said, I'm not coming back for a whole year for biology. Sorry. Good luck with that. And I left. And that's all, for me, it worked out. I had an English teacher tell me I'd never amount to anything. Now I've written 8 books and she's written 0. So, um, you know, I don't know, but
It's
it,
funny how life works out that way sometimes.
it is, I tell my daughters, I'm like, if you have enough passion in your soul for what you really want to do, you can succeed at anything. I don't think it's dependent on a college degree at all. So, but anyway, we digress there a little bit. So go back to when you graduated, you're in Shaker Heights, you graduate high school, you're ready to take on the world. What did you do then?
Well, I bounced around quite a bit and ended up in my 20s buying a business. I bought a company that was distressed. I turned it around, made it profitable, and sold it for about 7 times multiple, which
Wow.
actually had the indirect, unexpected consequence of launching a career in finance. So, long story short, the company that I owned, one of the companies that we did a lot of work for was what's called a third-party administrator, which is kind of it's a niche area of the world of finance. And
Okay.
I discovered that I had a knack for it. It was actually a really cool compliment that the leadership team at that company paid me early on in conversations. It was something along the lines of, and I take this as a great compliment. I was
Right.
told that I have the ability to absorb and retain massive amounts of complex information, and I pride myself on that. I'm kind of a jigsaw puzzle guy. I love really complex worlds and markets and those sorts of things. But
Wow.
also, I'm told I'm a good communicator, and that combination of being able to sort of parse through really complex environments and then communicate that well to other people is something that's really sought after in institutional finance. And so as I sold my business, I was looking at what do I do next? And I ended up taking a role at this third party administrator, eventually took over as a compliance and audit specialist, and then led 2 national teams. That
Wow.
got me recruited by a company called McDonald and Company with McDonald Investments, then recruited by Merrill Lynch in what was that, 2006 or thereabouts.
Wow.
So I was there at Merrill Lynch during the financial crash of 2008. That'll factor into
Wow.
our conversation, I believe.
Oh my gosh. I saw and I don't, I'd have to find it. This kid, and I mean kid, like 22-year-old, maybe a little older. I don't know. He had to do this thesis for his PhD or something in economics or finance or something. And he made this video. It was one of those explainer videos explaining why the collapse, the real estate and financial collapse happened in 2008. And it was the most eye-opening thing I think I've ever seen, because he explained it like I was a fifth grader, which works for me. And do you know what I'm talking about? You understand? I know you do. You have to understand why it all collapsed. I would love it
Yep.
if you explained it to the audience.
Wow. So everything that went into 2008, 2009, that really, what I'm going to suggest is that might actually be its own separate standalone show, because
Right.
there's so much that went in from
Right.
regulation, parts of it tied back to Barney Frank and some of the things that were being done in Congress that led up to what are called collateralized mortgage obligations. There are parts of
Yep.
it that relate to currency and hedging, and then a whole big piece that has everything to do with derivatives being sold within the world of finance. The whole thing is a cloudy, murky mess. I
Yep.
understand some pretty significant parts of it, but actually, I don't mean this to be evasive, because there is a whole big conversation that could take place in that realm of 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
the acquisitions, the forced mergers, the politicians getting as involved as they were, and this whole element that came out of it is of too big to fail. You have to sort of air quote that, because what in the heck
Yeah.
does that actually even mean?
Right.
But perhaps sort of more on point to our conversation, there is a piece that comes out of that 2008, 2009 timeframe that you may find really interesting, because it leads directly to where we are now. And that is I told you that I get in trouble a lot, and I tend to be maybe a deep thinker. But my view when I was hired by Merrill Lynch was I was doing institutional type of work in
Right.
an area that's called ERISA. You don't need to know what that is. If you want me to delve, I will, but that's sort of a niche within the world of finance, and that's my area of expertise. And so in going there, I thought, hey, I'm a young kid. I have to sort of earn my stripes. I have to prove myself in the world of finance. And now I've gone from a really big company called McDonald into an even bigger company called Merrill Lynch. And so I felt like at first a small fish in a big pond. And I was
Yeah.
like, what do I do to really sort of prove myself? And I
Right.
ended up doing this deep dive at the time into some of the behaviors around pension funds and how they're funded in Wall Street. And I wrote up this big, it was a pretty nasty, sort of a scathing review of how companies like Merrill Lynch were
Yeah.
artificially funneling money into a company called BlackRock. That probably rings a bell right now. They remember this is
I,
2000, late 2008. I actually submitted a letter saying that I don't believe it's appropriate the way that companies on Wall Street, these so-called quote unquote Wall Street firms,
yeah.
and I do air quote that because Wall Street quite literally turned their back on America a long time ago. I make that argument in each and everything that I do. Most of my podcasts
Yeah.
on UnWoke.Academy, we highlight all of that in
Yeah.
great detail. But I wrote this letter and turned it in, and it was, remember the feeling of being called to the principal's office? I don't know if you were. I was always
Yeah.
called I was in trouble a lot. I was just one of those
Right.
kids. I could never sit still. But I thought, silly me, in 2008, I was like, hey, this is really bad. I don't think that in a fair and reasonable world that all of this pension money should be funneled into a company like BlackRock. BlackRock should be on level playing field and shouldn't be treated differently or more favorably than other competitor firms. That was really my stance at the time. Well, that was very unpopular, and that led to.
Well, I was gonna bring up BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, but I was afraid that the social media gods might shut us down. But I mean, look, I've it's one of my go-to arguments with people that are like that don't understand the way that the media works and everything else. And it's like, look, you can go to finance.yahoo.com and type in any Fortune 500 company name that you want, and then go look at the shareholders, and who the greatest corporate shareholders are is always the highest percentage of holdings in any of those companies is Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. And I saw something else that told me that Vanguard is owned by or vice versa BlackRock. So they like own each other. Like what?
There's a lot of commonality in ownership, and I go into that in great detail on UnWoke.Academy. So just a little bit of backstory. I started to jump around. Hopefully the continuity of this really kind of comes through and your audience follows us in this conversation. But that niche that I work in the area of finance, it turns out there are a lot of different types of companies that have periodic need for that. And I've worked with major, really large governmental entities, public utilities commissions, colleges, endowments, and foundations, hospital networks, you name it. A lot of big law firms and accounting firms, they periodically call me or somebody like me with questions. And an interesting thing happened along the way. And I'm going to put it this way. I'm going to put it in as neutral terms as possible for any of your audience who may not be religious. I want to be respectful of everybody's viewpoint. I happen to be, and I think this is God's hand, but the craziest thing happened along this path of just trying to sort of find my career and assuming at first, like, okay, here I am on Wall Street, I've made it.
Right.
Lo and behold, a lot of twists and turns. And after leaving Wall Street, and that letter that I wrote was the beginning of the end, that really put a chill and frosted a lot of people. But a crazy thing happened in around 2015. A company based out of Southern California found me through their network. They were building something in the world of finance, and they went out to their group and said, who do you know that understands ERISA and the ERISA landscape and fiduciary due diligence and all that stuff? And that's my area of expertise. Their network told them to call me. It was something along the lines of, there's this guy Broadbent who's in Cleveland, Ohio, call him up. And that led to some really cool conversations. And I ended up being brought into an advisory team for this company in Santa Monica, California, Southern California. It's near LA.
Yeah.
In 2015, 2016, I served 2 years on their advisory board. It turns out they were building something called ESG analytics. Nobody had heard of it back then, including myself. I didn't know what ESG meant, and I had to ask them. Long story made short, my key takeaway at the time was this was sort of the newest, trendiest version of something called environmental or socially responsible investing, which has been around forever. I understand it. I know enough about it to incorporate that as needed. But I ended up helping this company for 2 years until the light bulb went on and I saw enough about what ESG was becoming.
Yeah.
And mind you, this was 2018, 2017, 2018. And I had that really uncomfortable call with that company in Santa Monica saying, look, the more I learn about this thing, I've come to realize our interests are no longer aligned. And you should know that I'm actually now opposed to everything that you're doing. So
what does ESG mean? What is that?
ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. And it's one of those harmful artificial tools that has shown up in the world of finance to twist and manipulate things. And
Wow.
Starting in 2017 and then forward for several years, I'll tell you what, being in the world of finance and opposing that was uncomfortable. I'm just going to put it that way. And I liken a lot of what I do and what our team does at UnWoke to kind of like being the early America's Frontline doctors. If you remember, there were some doctors when the jab came out who were trying to tap the brakes and push for exploration of things like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and quercetin, things like them. And those people were attacked, and they were shunned
and
in the
shut
world
down and
yeah.
I remember.
So the same thing happened for a long time in the world of finance. And I think there's a very comparable, if you ever watch UnWoke.Academy, I actually refer to that often. It's a similar sort of environment where in hospital networks, you have big pharma with big money buying up and really controlling hospital networks and systems that then dictate and control what doctors are able to do. In the world of finance, it's virtually identical. You have globalist money managers, global banks that put the money into buying Wall Street. Again, I'm air quoting that. It's not Wall Street like we remember from the movies anymore. And they really top-down control what advisors, financial planners, stockbroker types are allowed to do for their clients. And so being in 2017, 2018 and saying, hey, this whole environmental, social, and governance thing, I'm not digging it. I'm not there. You need to explain it more. And I kept asking questions. I want a clearer definition of exactly what it means. Point to it and tell me. Don't give me feel-goodery. Don't give me virtue signaling. I want to know specifically exactly what it means and how you're defining it. Nobody was ever able to. And so I started UnWoke investing to try and put the highlight on that and push back.
Wow. So I'm trying to go to UnWoke.Academy and it's not opening for me. Am I misspelling something?
UnWoke.Academy. It should go. It actually, for the moment, it's actually redirecting to the Substack where all the videos are all posted. And we've got interviews.
It won't go for just UnWoke.Academy.
Correct.
Will not go for me.
Well, I don't want to take too much time on a live.
That's fine.
The first I'm hearing of any issues. Maybe they're watching us, and the globalist banks are freezing my account.
I think possible. And I think we'll figure that out before we end the show today, but so people can go check it out. But I really think that it's almost I talk a lot about cognitive dissonance, how people are so programmed to believe one thing that it's virtually impossible for them to see it in any other way. And I go, there's actually more to the story that people just are not aware of. And when it comes to the financial institutions and the power that they have, like, can you dive into that at all? Like the how, I mean, I'm just going to throw this out there. How about that? And then you decide if you want to run with it or not. Elections are controlled by financial institutions. I said what I said.
Okay, so yes, and more. The first thing is, while you were talking, I opened up a browser on another screen and I've tried it. I am seeing the same issue you are. I have no idea what that is. The site has not been down for a year or so. So something's happening. I'll figure out what it is and get UnWoke.Academy back up and running and working again.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, two things. Let me quickly finish where we are now and give your audience some hope.
Yeah.
The first thing to know is that world from 2017, 2018, when I was making phone calls and talking to all the firms that I know in finance, and it's most all of them. I've interacted with virtually every firm you've heard of and know a lot of the key players, and including many that you've probably never heard of before. So more of the small behind the scenes types of financial firms. And
Right.
for a long time, those phone calls to say, what do you think of this ESG thing? I need better answers, and I need more definitive information about where it's going and what you believe it to be and definitions, etc. There were a few people that were really standoffish. They were just like, go pound sand, get out of here. ESG is the greatest thing. It's a gift to mankind because it's going to cure all of the environment, and it's going to give more meaning to LGBTQ plus, and it's going to diversity,
Right.
equity, inclusion, all that stuff. And some people had bought into that. A lot of people were sort of quietly behind the scenes that might hang up and then call me from their mobile and say, dude, thank you so much for calling me, because it's an oppressive work environment now. We can't even stick our head up and acknowledge that we question any of this stuff. And one of the quotes that I got from a longtime friend of mine at one of the big Wall Street firms, one of the guys that stayed on Wall Street, he was like, it's like they're cramming this product down our throats with a 2x4, and there is no questioning it, or you get in big trouble. Things
Yeah.
might unravel, you might lose your job. So same sort of thing, again, drawing that parallel between big pharma controlling healthcare and big globalist investment managers controlling the world of finance. But
Yeah.
flash forward now, we now have, it was 2 weeks ago, I believe, the Indiana Secretary of State has filed lawsuit against BlackRock for use of ESG in their supposed analytics. We now have American Airlines Pilots Union is suing. The New York City Workers Union is suing. And I believe we're up to now 21 states attorneys general are asking questions about this use
Of
of
BlackRock.
not just specifically BlackRock, but ESG. BlackRock
Okay.
tends to be the biggest name that's used in conjunction
Right.
with the use of ESG, but they're far from the only one. And so I've spent a couple of years uncovering that stuff. And then one other piece, because I think this factors into exactly what you're pointing to, and that is uncovering the actual institutional owners behind these corporations, these woke corporations. And so twice now on the social media platform X, we've seen big globalist companies try to pull their advertising dollars when Elon Musk has refused to censor.
Yep.
Each time we go through and do a deep dive analysis into the institutional owners and the backing and the reasons behind those corporate behaviors. And we could actually take it one step further in recent actions of companies like Harley Davidson,
Yep.
the tractor supply company,
Yep.
John Deere tractor, lots of those type of companies.
Wasn't Lowe's part of it, or
Yeah,
yeah.
it seems at some point, virtually all of these big companies, Target,
Yeah.
Disney, all of them,
Yeah.
we have been drilling down and exposing the corporate institutional owners of each of those. So that is the lion's share of our work. We're trying to kind of simultaneously do a few things. We're putting the spotlight on those companies that have gone woke. We're highlighting the reasons behind it.
Yeah.
And to be fair to them, this is lost often on your average person who responds to something like Bud Light, which is owned by Anheuser-Busch. Like,
Yeah.
why are they suddenly doing this? Or Ford or Chevy or John Deere. They
Yeah.
really don't have much of a choice. There's something called the Corporate Equity Index, which is kind of like a social credit score for individuals that's being used to force those companies into bad self-inflicted harm at the corporate
Wow.
level. So
If they don't toe the line, so to speak.
if they don't toe the line, life gets really difficult for them as a global corporation. Now, mind you, if you
Wow.
are shopping local, that stuff evaporates. If you are, well, first of all, use money, use actual hard currency,
Yeah.
because the left, the globalists are after the US dollar. They are working on collapsing it. We've already seen that happen a little bit with the loss of the petrodollar. But the intention clearly is to create these 15-minute cities with centralized banking, digital currency, all of which should terrify anybody who has a brain.
But
Um,
I have a question around that, though. For years, I don't know how long it's been, but we have way far outprinted what we have in as far as covering the value of the dollar. Well, it used to be like you had $100 million in gold, so we'll print $100 million in cash, and that gold backs the money, the cash, right?
right,
So it's not like that anymore. We don't have $2.5 trillion in gold, or whatever the number is. I recently heard that we have $2.5 trillion in currency and coins in circulation. How does and if you can explain this if it's possible to explain it in layman's terms, so pretend like you're talking to a 10-year-old and explain to me how that part of it works, and then where the $36 trillion deficit, I mean, I don't think people can, most people can't even fathom a million, let alone a trillion. And then,
right.
so talk about that a little bit, if you would.
All right. So I did make a note. Do want to come back to answering your question about elections and how they're run, because
Oh,
that factors in also.
yeah.
But as you can see here, there are lots of nooks and crannies to the world of
Lot.
finance. Our objective is to create parallel economy. I want to be clear about where I am and the voice that I represent. So there are a lot of people out there, like you've got Dr. Ben Carson and country music legend John Rich have created Old Glory Bank, part of which is to address the types of issues you're talking about. Part of it is to make uncancelable banks. You've also got the former Secret Service and now celebrity personality Dan Bongino
Love
has
him.
created a parallel alternative to PayPal, which is super woke. I am working on and have actually just recently launched the world's first financial PMA. I believe we're the first out of the gate. That's actually financialpma.com. You can check that one. Hopefully that one's not taken down. You'll
Right.
see how under attack I am during this podcast.
Right.
Um, but
There you
so
go.
there are lots of us out there, and the cool thing is most all of us are collaborating and playing really nicely together, which doesn't always happen for those of us on the right. But we are creating parallel economy as fast as we can to combat all of this stuff. And to your point, yes, there is actually methodology and intention behind devaluing the US currency. And there are lots of people that try and put this glamorous veneer on the thing and talk about
Yeah.
inflating out of debt, etc. That's just it's just double speak for harming middle America, middle class America. The objective, I would say, one of the key starting points is look up something called Cloward Piven. Cloward Piven is a theory that was presented decades ago about effectively how to destroy a nation from within. What you want to do is flood all the economic systems like social welfare, food systems, all of the resources that a society relies upon, just overwhelm it rapidly while also driving up massive debt. Drive it up as fast as you can. And so over the
Right.
past 4 years, well, actually a lot more than four, but like on double speed the last 4 years, you've seen money flowing out into all parts of the world except America. And there is something to that whole America last. I think that's sort of a social interpretation of what we're experiencing. But there is a
Yeah.
purpose and reason behind it, and none of it is good. It has to do with the destruction of the US dollar, trying to take it to the point where, what's a good analogy here? So I'm going to draw another analogy in the banking and US dollar backing arena, the
Okay.
gold backed dollar that you brought up, to the world of police, the police forces. And I hope that most of your audience, or all of them, are like me. I back the blue. I love local, small, regional, community policing.
Yep.
That stuff works. When you have somebody that lives and breathes in the community and they're answerable and they're accountable, you have better society. The
Yep.
intention of defund the police and just the vilification of police officers for decades now is to disrupt and dismantle that and eventually get people to the point where life is so bad and crime is so high that they're willing to submit to federalized police force. So you have that in Mexico, you have it in Cuba, you have it in Venezuela, you have it in North Korea, you have it in places where dictatorships exist. You have federalized police, and those federal police, they don't care. They don't care about your rights. They don't care about the Constitution. They don't care about any of that stuff. The objective they have is to come in, follow orders, and make money, to be able to feed themselves. That's it, pure and simple. We saw it in Canada during the truckers' revolt. You've seen it places where you ship in these federales, I like to call them, in sort of a recognition of how bad things have gotten in Mexico. In a similar way, the intention is to devalue the dollar and collapse it to the point where people are willing to accept an alternative that maybe helps them to put food on the table. That's where centralized banking digital currency, or CBDC for short, that's intended to show up. Once we are so distraught and so once we're to the point, you literally, like many parts of the world, you would have to have a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy a loaf of bread. When you get to that point, then you have a society that's willing to submit to the atrocious, awful nature of centralized banking, government-controlled digital currency. Now, it actually is worse than it's ever been in human history, because in the past, you used to have the government could swap out notes, and they would just replace an entire type of currency with this new currency, and they would dictate and control that. That's bad enough. Now you have these things. You have your smartphone that has GPS on it, and the government will be able to control not only what you get, how long you can use it, they can make it expire, and they can also geofence you, put you within certain confines. And if you go outside of that perimeter, either you can't spend your money or you pay a tariff for being further than 15 minutes away from your home base, if you will. All of that stuff is all part of the plan. It's mapped out. It's a strategy. It was actually published in 1991. You can hear Hillary Clinton, of all people, there she is again, lo and behold, Hillary showing up in 91 talking about this stuff. It was spelled out and written in a document that not enough people have actually taken the time to read, called Agenda 2020. Oh, no, it was originally Agenda 2021. But 2021 is passed. They were behind schedule, so they've changed it now to Agenda 2030. And they're all parts of the country, including, and we brought up Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland's new-ish mayor, Justin Bibb, is on record saying that he wants to be the U.S.'s first 15-minute city. I think that's atrocious and awful. And as Cleveland has fallen from the place that I held dear, my family has for generations built it. Now we're to the point where Cleveland, last I checked, I think it was had the fourth worst crime wave. So you're these same people taking control of healthcare, education, currency, goods and services, consumer staples, you name it, and then trying to control all of that and put everybody into these, effectively, their ghettos. 15-minute city.
Oh, I'm getting a migraine. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, my blood pressure's going up as we have this conversation. So, okay. I think you would have to be a complete idiot. And I mean that in the sincerest form. You'd have to be a complete moron if you didn't see that things aren't good right now, at least on a surface level, and much, much deeper. But um, for the people who are living with their heads buried in the sand, yeah, of course, I've had people go, well, of course the economy's bad, Biden's trying to recover from the whole COVID thing, and that takes time. I mean, of course gas is almost double what it was in 2020. We're still trying to recover from the financial collapse of COVID and all of the other crap. So we know that there's problems, and everybody watching right now, unless they're complete idiots, and forgive me if I'm calling you an idiot and because you don't believe this, but um, they know there's problems. Jonathan, you're a brilliant guy. You're actually far, far more brilliant than I had expected from this interview. Quite frankly, I didn't know what to expect, and holy crap, my mind is blown. And my friend Doug Wing, the former owner of Little Giant Ladder Company, little third largest ladder company in the world, he says many Americans want to live like this. They want the government to take care of everything for them, and that is a fact. So what's the solution to all of this, man? Like, holy crap. I'm trying to keep it clean because honestly, like my head, honestly, I want to explode. There's people that just, Doug's right. There's a huge percentage of the population that just, well, I don't know. I get my check every month and I'm good. I mean, yeah, bread's more expensive, but I'm good. What's the solution?
All right. So as promised, I want to outline the issues, but then give hope. So
yes,
the first
hope.
thing to know.
That's what Obama ran on. Hope.
Well, that was false hope. I'm going to give you real hope. We're talking real hope. So,
right.
Because I'm on the Patriots, I'm on the side of truth, and there are ways that we can fight back, and some of them are underway, and I believe they're working. And when we hit some critical mass and really start making a big splash, they can have a massive impact pretty much overnight.
Okay.
The first thing to know is there's a reason, going back through time, there's a reason that bad guys want to control the flow of information. And we're seeing it happen on a global scale right now with Durov's arrest in Paris Saturday before last, and the attacks against free speech on social media, from X to Durov, by the way, is a reference to the guy who owns the social media platform Telegram, which is often used by people like me trying to find ways to get and communicate truth, not sort of narrated fiction. But the reason that the bad guys want to control the narrative and what passes for news, it wasn't new when the Nazis did it. The Socialist Party took over Germany and they wanted to control information because they can control how people feel. So we're in an environment and we have to recognize that our enemies, globalists, leftists, whatever you want to call them, our enemies control the media in the United States. That does not mean that the majority of Americans want to sit back and wait for the check to show up in their mailbox. It means that we're being told that that's the new shape of America, that the media is, that their job quite literally now is to placate us, numb us, and get us thinking that we've lost, that America is lost. And there's a reason. I mean, dude, go back. You can see the playbook. You look at Native Americans and they roll in an infusion of alcohol to drug the Native Americans. You look at Black America and they roll out and the pumping of drugs into Black America. It destroyed Black America, among other leftist agendas like aid to families of dependent children, etc. And you look at Russia, Russia was vodka. You look at China and Maoist China, it was the opioid crisis. What they want to do is dumb down and placate a society for long enough that they roll over and bad guys take over. That's the point where we are. We need to recognize that we are not a minority. We used to say that we were the silent majority. Well, those of us who actually care and are patriotic and are fighting back, we're not silent anymore. We're they're trying to silence us, but we're not silent anymore.
Look what Doug says. He's right. Exactly what you're saying.
Yep. It's slow and through stupidity. So on a parallel note, among all the rabbit holes that I've fallen into, because apparently my wife is fond of saying that I'm not good at saying no, I was presented years ago with the opportunity to take a role with an organization called Protect Ohio Children. And that's part of the Protect Child Health Coalition. And I'm honored to have served 3 years as a chair, board member, and territory lead. I covered 204 school districts in Ohio, which used to be a top 10 destination for education. Ohio has fallen to 38th now. Well, at the same time, the U.S. has fallen to roughly dead last of developed nations. So we're most expensive, last place in education. There's a reason for all of this. And the sooner we wake up and realize, and I go into all that in great detail, who owns the publishers? The publishers that pump material into K through 12 education, they're making a fortune off of destroying young minds and dividing black and white and race baiting and gender baiting with gender confusion. The money that's flowing, I track all of it. I'm the follow the money guy. But here's the hope. It's actually easy. And I'm working on making it so simple, easy, that everybody can just sort of roll over and fall into it. And that's parallel economy. When we look at, I'm going to put it in the term that we like to use. There are a couple of expressions that we throw out. One is defund the woke, just throwing back that leftist term that they use, defund the woke. The other is dis the communist globalist left, dis the left. It stands for know where you donate, invest, and spend. My reason for all of this is because I point to and I can clearly articulate how our enemies are using our money against us. You look at how your 401k is invested, your 403b, your thrift or 457 plan, your IRA, your brokerage account, and I'm going to give you one example. So part of the reason that I set up that FinancialPMA, the people who are coming in, they each get an alias. And I landed on cartoon names because I loved cartoons as a kid. And so I tell everybody, pick your cartoon name and you have an alias. This is Foghorn Leghorn. Foghorn Leghorn is a family man who came in and has given us access to all of his statements, how he's invested, and his communications with his financial advisor. Here's a guy who told his advisor, based partly on watching my show, UnWoke.Academy, I don't want to be invested in BlackRock, State Street, or Vanguard. That's a direct quote. That's an objective that he gave to his financial advisor. This advisor ended up putting him into an array of different iShares. If you follow the world of finance, you know who owns iShares? BlackRock. It's the ETF division, effectively, of BlackRock. So the guy is not following orders. He ends up invested in 3 pharmaceutical companies, and many of the companies in this huge list of 30-some different investments, you have things like Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and others that are super woke that repeat 3, 4, 5, and even 6 times throughout the portfolio. So here's this guy thinking he's got a pretty good nest egg built up, and he's in probably pretty good hands because it's Wall Street and it looks glamorous.
Right.
And he's telling his advisor, I don't want to be in the woke stuff. And he's loaded up in the woke stuff. And so,
but let me be the devil's advocate. Does the advisor know that though? I mean, does he really realize it? Because there's mutual funds, right? And I'm not a financial guy, so correct me if I go off the tracks, just like go Ken, no. But mutual funds are conglomerate of different companies, right?
Sometimes. So there are lots of different ways that that can happen. There's
Okay.
sub-advised funds and co-advised funds, et cetera. But for the most part, most people who are interacting, I'm sorry to use the term, I know it can be off-putting, but in the world of finance, there are really kind of two buckets. There's retail and institutional. Any person working for their own money, that's retail. Any
Okay.
endowment or somebody who is a trustee managing money on behalf of somebody else, that's institutional. And
Okay.
institutional is where most of my work is done. And I actually, part of my job is uncovering exactly what you described. They're called party and interest. So in the financial world, you might have an insurance company that offers a 401k plan, but also happens to have purchased a mutual fund company, a list of mutual funds. Those are party and interest. And to your point, yeah, there are often, I find financial advisors, even some pretty high profile financial advisors, they just don't take the time to do the research. So if your employer, Breakthrough Walls 401k plan is offered through XYZ insurance company, and you see a list of like 14 different mutual funds and there are 13 different names on there, you might think, well, it seems like a pretty diverse mix. It's
Yeah,
up to
I'm
people,
diversified.
right? I'm highly diversified. And meanwhile, it's up to people like me to go through and figure out that there's only 4 companies that own all 13. They just use
Oh my
different names. And then we actually have to
Jesus.
take it a step further in the institutional world and look at how you're buying it. So there are different price points, et cetera, and make sure you're getting the lowest available. And that's
I
my
mean,
world.
dude, you're talking about a freaking shell game.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's exactly
I
what it
mean,
is.
that's what it is. It's just a handful of companies playing the shell game. It's crazy.
But getting back to the point that I'm working on trying to hopefully get across clearly and
Oh, sorry.
articulately, there's hope because there are a
I
lot
don't
of,
feel any right now, Jonathan. I'm just going to be honest.
I'm not doing my job well. Darn it. All right, let me backstep a few and then come back at this.
Okay.
There are a lot of really small managers out there and they're not getting enough attention because in the world of finance, it's actually counterintuitive for many of us Americans. We tend to think the bigger the better. But in the
Okay.
world of investing, you really actually often want that small manager, especially the small manager that's been able to break the shackles of the CRT DEI stuff. That's the critical race theory based diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that environmental, social, and governance ESG stuff. And there are still some really great small managers out there that are doing a good job of just keeping their blinders on and focused on true actual fundamentals. By the way, if you follow me on social media, you'll see I've actually posted a request for information that I've sent out to financial institutions asking them whether they're buying into this smoke and mirrors hogwash nonsense of ESG in place of true analytics for their investments. Take that, run with it. I don't claim I wrote it, but I'm not going to copyright it. I want everybody to ask that. Take that to your financial advisor. And if you help run a 401k plan or something like it, if you're a fiduciary at the place where you work, grab that darn thing, run with it, take it to your shop, whoever's offering your 401k plan, and start asking the hard questions. We need to be doing it because, Ken, that's where the hope is. We could deflate this whole globalist movement practically overnight if
How?
we could successfully defund the woke. We take away their money. We have, yes, it's true that we have the drastic, massive over taxation in the United States. But when
Yeah.
you combine the people who are fighting back from everywhere from Japan and the Netherlands to parts of Europe, and there are big parts of France that are actually fighting back to Brazil, you tell people to look not just at the company. That's fine if you want to boycott Target or whatever. That's fine. I like to call it vote your values. But more importantly, look at your portfolio. Look at how and where you're invested, because those companies, they'll wait you out. They don't care if you don't spend your next $1,000 there. They care that they have $20 to $30 trillion in your IRA and 401k plan, your 403b, that's propping up their share price. If we take that away, we win.
Don't you find, though, that, let's pretend that I've got $10 million and I call you up and I go, hey, I have this $10 million just kind of sitting here on my desk and I don't know what to do with it. You would say, well, here's the right place to invest it. You're going to see probably lower returns than you would if you went to, say, a BlackRock. No?
Not true.
Okay.
Not true.
So
no, there's
really
plenty of data. There's plenty of data that shows, partly because of our response to the woke, the managers out there that have avoided the woke, they're actually doing better. So you can have your cake and eat it too.
Wow. Okay. See, that's important. I've got some, Doug Wing, you ought to see his man cave garage with his 15 sports cars. But so there's people watching that, have huge investments. And I think that, I think it's important that people hear this. So I cannot believe we've been on here 56 minutes already, man. Holy crap. We can go over, though. I'm fine with that if you are. But
sure.
The people watching that don't, I'm one of those people that I look at, I see it. I know it's true. I know that everything around me is being manipulated. I don't watch the media. I listen to people like Elon Musk, who's the richest man in the world net worth wise, and he's out here saying, "Hey, stop. Like, you got to stop listening. We're in a dangerous situation here." And he's trying to wake people up on a massive global scale, to the point of the leaders of countries like threatening him and everything else. But how does the average person that goes to work 9 to 5, they come home 5 days a week, they, whatever. I mean, how does that average person survive all of this? Like, get through all this?
First thing is speak up. The average person, I'll tell you what, they get what's called a 408b2 fee disclosure statement. That's just a fancy way of saying they get fee disclosure on their workplace retirement plan. Hopefully they have something like a good 401k. And once a quarter, they get a sheet. Hopefully they actually bother to open it up and look at their sheet. And the sheet says that they pay X in fees. And if those fees go up, you can bet your bottom dollar there are a handful of people that actually pay attention. They go in and they gripe, they piss and moan. And often people like me go in and I will do what's called fee benchmarking, and I'll help their argument and get those fees lowered again. If those same people listen to UnWoke.Academy, I give all the information. Everything I do is free, open source, open to the public. The most I do, because we've converted our business model and now we have some paid subscribers. The most I do is a 3-day wait just to give thanks to those people who fund us and keep us afloat financially. By the way, there's a side note there having to do with weaponized regulators. We'll get back to that. But if those same people, if we can get more people paying attention, and the people who already do pay attention, the type who open up those fee statements and look at the fees that they're being charged in their 401k or their IRA account or whatever, get those people to sort of shift focus just a little bit. Look at the fees, of course, but look at the investment options. And are they all woke? If they're a whole big list of only Vanguard, that's a real problem. It means that somebody somewhere is not doing their job. And if there are a whole big list of ESG this and CEI that and all that stuff, if it looks woke, hold it up and measure it against all the yardsticks I'm putting up on UnWoke.Academy and go in and cry foul. Go into your human resources office and your CFO, etc., and cry foul. If you want help, That's actually my area of expertise. A lot of the way that retirement plans are run in the US has a lot to do with me and a small group of people like us who for decades we've been involved and had an influence on the rules and regulations, et cetera. So
Wow.
I can use that area of expertise to coach people through how to fix the things that they have. I'm going to tell people about this awesome thing that's available that too few people know and understand called self-directed brokerage window, which is being able to know what you own inside of your 401k plan. And virtually anything is available to you beyond
Wow.
just that little limited menu. That's a brilliant answer. But let's take it one step further. In looking at the problems and creating solutions, there's opportunity for great hope, because let's put together a couple of features here of where the left are trying to take us and reverse engineer it and fix it in a way that makes America great again. One of them, and bear with me here, there are a couple of pieces that, in my view, I see all of this and I see the pieces being broken and I see how we can put them together in a much better, comprehensive way. One of them has to do with local, regional community banks. Community banks are closing at an alarming rate. There were over 800, I believe, that closed during Obama's administration, and it's on track for much worse. The objective ultimately is to get to maybe 3 or 4 globalist banks that control all global currency, and they're
Yep.
kind of co-owned by a handful of families and oligarchs. That's their objective. As that's happening, you're seeing a strangulation of small business. Yes, it's true that a lot got crushed by the COVID fear and the draconian mandates and all that stuff. But in a real, natural, normal world, lots of small businesses would be opening up and starting to flourish now. They're
Right.
not, because they can't get access to capital and cash flow.
Right.
So here's a vision that I'm pushing for, and I'm working with a big list nationally on creating this. We're working on creating a clearinghouse of what's called private funding, private placement. We want direct funding ability for average Americans to put into pools of money, kind of like a bank, to be
Yep.
able to fund small business venture. And if you ever watched anything like Shark Tank or those types of shows, there's a reason that the really wealthy, like, they're not investing in Microsoft or Apple
Right.
or whatever. It's run up. They're not putting their money there. They're putting their money into massive growth potential. And if we can create that environment, we have the ability, once again, to have your cake and eat it too. We have the
Yep.
ability for we Americans to fund new growth and small business venture all across the country, and
Yep.
then also have that be a little piece of our retirement nest egg. So if a handful of those companies, and I'm working on a few of them right now, I'm trying to help several get launched and get off the ground. If a few of those companies take off, you're talking about massive orders of magnitude growth in your
Yeah.
portfolio, not being happy with, maybe something artificially went up 3% because Wall Street lied about some reports and pretending that the share price went up even more. The valuations are insane on Wall Street right now. So
I
taking all those pieces, I'm trying to find better answers.
I I think that I have a friend. You just reminded me. I have a friend that used to work for one of the largest insurance companies in the world. They're headquartered right there in Columbus, Ohio, and I won't disclose their name, but they are like the second largest employer in Ohio, I think, um, second or third. But um, and his sole position in that company, along with like two other people, I believe, was to find small community banks and buy them for this insurance company. This company paid him 600,000 a year, I think, to go out every day, and his budget every day was $50 million a day to go out and buy little community banks that were struggling. They didn't care if they were losing money. They didn't care. Just buy them all, buy them all, buy them all. and you know who I'm talking about. And I think
Yep.
that that's heartbreaking because they're being gobbled up and thrown to the side.
So I know a lot about that company, and actually, I was one of a handful of people that was tapped to help them build their retirement plan offering years ago. So I know a lot about what you're speaking of. On the banking side of the world, that's been going on for a long time, and now we're seeing clearly the intended consequence. And if we
Yeah.
let it continue, then imagine your whatever community you happen to live in,
Yeah.
listener. If you have aspirations of being a small business owner, first of all, kudos to you. I love it. I started in small business when I was 26. That's when I bought that company.
Yeah.
And I've been off to the races ever since. We should have an environment in the United States that rewards that is conducive to small business venture. Right now, we don't. If we
No.
can if we can solve for that and find a better answer, because we know that those community banks have been closed. They've been attacked and vilified and closed forever.
Yeah.
Going back into the 40s and 50s, and that's the reason Bonnie and Clyde were popular, because they put it to the banks. So even Hollywood was behind it. The
Yeah.
vilification. I'm not saying that all banks are this great thing, but they're a necessary resource in communities. And if you want to see your kids, your nieces and nephews, and future generations be able to get off the ground and do something with their lives other than wait for the mailbox for some small little check to show up, or more likely watch their smart device for a deposit of some fake currency that they can only use for the next 30 days as long as they don't leave 15 minutes from their home, that is a bleak future. If you want to see funding and small business ventures, somebody opening a barber shop or somebody starting a farm to table new restaurant or something, that's possible, but it's only possible if those people have access to capital. It's the only way that it works. And
Yeah.
knowing that banks are closing, and knowing that we have major problems with Wall Street and how money is currently being managed. As a side note, two things. One is, I recently had the great opportunity to interview Justin Bernier, who started National Security Index. He
Wow.
and a group of people, they were behind the development and presentation of the CPA report, which was presented to Congress, showing how firms like BlackRock are allegedly using offshore managers to take US dollar investments and funnel them into the growth of Chinese Communist Party's military ambition. That's not okay. That's not even a little bit okay. And we know it. So when we see that sort of thing and we're faced with the alternatives, do we continue to put our money into preposterously overvalued mega cap companies, which is what's happening? I just illustrated a point for Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah.
Or do we allow it to go into our enemies internationally? I call them woke left companies, causes, and countries. Or do we create an environment where we can kind of section off a little bit of our investment life, our investment dollars, and we, the people, become the bank where we can fund future small business growth and development? That's the vision.
I understand it. I get it, and I love it. I think it's amazing. The problem I have, Jonathan, is what you just said about somebody taking something to Congress. And I've said this for a long time. Like, well, that's all well and good. People ask, well, why do the Republicans, and it's not so this is just my opinion. I'm gonna throw it out there. There's no such thing as Republicans or Democrats anymore. It's a uniparty. And that so it's two wings of the same bird, and they're all doing the same stuff. So I think when you say, well, it was taken to Congress, I mean, we see this all the time. You get Ted Cruz up there, and he puts on his I'm a badass shirt and goes after people and just hammers them, and nothing happens. And then you get somebody else up there hammers them, nothing happens. They catch them in the act of hundreds of millions of dollars or whatever it is. And so the problem is all of those people, in my opinion, it's all theater. They're all being funded by the same people. It's the fox is watching the hen house, or however that saying goes. Like it's all a faguzzi, a fagazi, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's all BS. And I think that this is, again, just my opinion. Man, we need a do-over. I mean,
I'm working on that too. So I came to the same conclusion. I actually started something called Ohio Rhino Hunters. Clearly, I've moved around quite a bit. I'm in Ohio. And I agree with you. It's a big uniparty cabal. It's a swamp. And we know it. They know we know it. It's a matter of being able to find ways to fight back. So one of the first things I did about 2.5 years ago, I helped organize a group of 22 of us who ran for county central committee, which is really the board of directors, the operating committee, if you will, of the Republican Party in our county. 18 of us won. Now I've moved rural. In my rural county, that actually gives us a fighting chance. They're now probably 50-50 between true Republicans and the people who, whatever, there's some, and again, I'm sort of speaking on a national level. But in that experience, I actually got to be friends with a gentleman by the name of Dan Schultz. He is the man behind Precinct Strategy, the website, the book, the podcast, etc. And twice a week for over a year now, twice a week on the social media platform X, Dan and I coach America on how to get involved at the local level to reclaim the Republican Party from within. The objective is to get constitutional, conservative, patriotic Americans interested and involved again. It's an uphill battle because starting around the mid 1970s, in the 1980, for some reason, our schools gave up on teaching U.S. government and civics. So
why?
Because
part of the plan.
They wanted it as part of the plan. They wanted to get to this. And you look at the history of education and how government-run education was introduced into the United States. It's a horror show. And this is the intended consequence. There are so many people that don't even know that we have 3 branches of government and what that means and what's supposed to be the checks and balances. They think we're a democracy and not a constitutional republic. And there's a lot of confusion. So we try to kind of clear fog cutter. We're going to clear the fog, help people to learn and understand, and then get involved at the local level. And we've got some success stories now, but it's a battle because now here's another piece you may not know around, and this wasn't the first time it was done. It was the first major push that I think was very successful. Around 2010, there was actually a push promoted from within the Democrat Party to infiltrate the Republican Party. And so they started training people who were Democrats to look, walk, talk, and sound like Republicans. And then they ran them for Central Committee, starting there because most people don't realize the power of Central Committee. And many of them have taken over. They have taken over. I've been focused on this for 2+ years. I honestly can't tell you if those people who have ended up there, if they just don't know that they're Democrats, if they're Manchurian candidates, if they know and there's clearly outright. We have instances near me of groups of people who are everything they display. It's like their yard signs are all Kamala, it's Harris and Waltz, and they're like far left in everything that you can measure, and yet they sit on the Republican Party Central Committee. It's mystifying, but it was a brilliant tactic starting in 2010. The way we fix that is precinct strategy. And it's been proven, as soon as you hit that tipping point where you have majority, you can silence them. And just like most bullies, what ends up happening when you silence the bad guys, they run out of steam quickly and they just
Yep.
evaporate. Right now, they bully their way in, they push, they yell at people, they prod, they take over things, and they will vilify any of us that sound like me. They will call me all kinds of names, none of which are true, in order to try and silence me and call me an extremist for being patriotic Republican American.
Wow. You know, Jonathan, we could do, I think, I honestly mean this, we could do a show like every day on this and never cover all of it.
Right.
It's absolutely insane to me. I am going to pop up the Financial PMA website. That one is working. I have it open. The other one still is not working. But I know you're going to work on that. So what is the other one again? It's
UnWoke.Academy. And I am actually very troubled by the fact that it is down. It means something. I'll figure out what it means here in short order.
Okay.
Well, actually, so here's another approach. You can find a bunch of stuff. You can find really all of it on Substack, the social media platform Substack. For anybody familiar with it, find me at J Broadbent.
So I'm going to scroll that UnWoke.Academy or FinancialPMA.com. And then what's it called? Substack? What is that?
Substack. Dude, you got to check out Substack. It's a great platform. I dig it. It is a social media platform where you can post videos and long form articles and all kinds of stuff.
And what's your handle? Or
the handle on Substack is at J Broadbent. So that's just first initial, last name Broadbent. Okay. So that's a way around the fact that UnWoke.Academy is down for the moment.
Well, that's all right. There's other options. Are you on Rumble?
I am. Same thing. UnWoke.Academy. UnWoke Academy.
Everybody go follow this guy. If by watching this show you did not gather that he's one of the smartest people you're ever going to meet, then
thank you for that.
Go eat some Wheaties or something. No, I mean, look, everything you talked about, I mean, to some degree I was familiar with. And I think that, most, when I say most, I think that a lot of Americans are, waking up, at least waking up to the point of going, man, something just doesn't seem right. And I'm not talking, again, I'll say it over and over and over. I don't fear who hears me say this. I don't care. I don't think there's a separation of parties anymore. I just don't. If anybody says, well, then why is Trump, why do you support Trump because he has to be. You cannot win a presidential election in this country if you're not one of those two parties, at least at this moment. It's not possible. You can't even vote in a primary if you're not in one of those two parties, which is insane to me. So, I think that, people do your research. I mean, you really need to, this isn't, I mean, Jonathan's not some whack job. I'm not a whack. Well, I'm crazy, but I'm not a whack job crazy. But we're not like, this isn't like people are like conspiracy theory, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's true. And it's just like the jab. They said, oh, you got to have it. You got to have it. If you get it, you're not going to ever get COVID. And here Fauci's had it. He just 2 weeks ago and claims, oh, I've had it 4 or 5 times. But then there's a tape that rolls with him saying, if you get it, you're never going to get COVID. It's like, dude, stop listening to the media. Stop listening to all of this crap. Go follow Jonathan. Go to the UnWoke Academy when it's back up, or go FinancialPMA.com. Follow Jonathan everywhere. Follow him on X. Great place to follow him, and learn this stuff. Stop putting your head in the sand, because it won't be long and the lawnmower's going to come along and chop every party. I mean, it's just like, you got to get your head out of the sand and look at what's really happening here in this country. Anyway, I'll stop. Jonathan, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
It's very educational, man. People need to get this. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't feel that you need to get all of it from this show. I'm thankful to have the opportunity to introduce this with Breakthrough Walls. And thank you, Ken, for hosting. Yeah, but really, we break it into bite-sized pieces. I try to make it sort of light and fun and engaging and stuff. Just watch it over time. Each time you maybe get a little bit more, or it points you in a different direction or whatever. So it's not, don't feel that you need to try and absorb the complexity all at once. There's a lot of engaging content on the website.
I posted a video the other day on X. I chop up some of these and put clips out. A couple years ago in 2022, end of September of 2022, I had a beautiful young lady, of the name of Rose Schindler. She was 93 years old. She was on my show. Her and her husband were both survivors of Auschwitz, and the horror stories that she told in that episode of this show. And here's the crazy part. I said, didn't people like notice what was happening? And she said, no, we didn't notice what was happening. And everybody just went along. She said, I don't understand why. She said this, and I posted this. She said, I don't understand why we Jews, we did not fight back. I don't understand it. We did not fight back. We just went along with it. And she watched her entire family, watched them with her own eyes be led into a gas chamber, and they thought they were just going in there to be showered off and cleaned up. And it was a gas chamber, and her entire family died. And I think about, like, man, wake up. You got to wake up before it's too late. And I know that you said that what triggered that is you said, I try to keep it lighthearted, but I think we're past the point of lighthearted. I think we need to be like, wake up, man. Like, this is getting serious.
Yeah. So in a future conversation, if you want, I can switch to German and tell you about the time that I spent living in Germany. And I have been on the other side of the East Berlin Wall before it came down. I can tell you all about those experiences. Having researched those places, I watched the videos, and I know all about the rise of the German Socialist Workers' Party, also known as the Nazi Party.
Wow. Yeah, we got to have John. Who wants to see Jonathan back on? Drop a 1 in the comments. I'd love to have you back on. Maybe we just do a separate thing or something. I don't know. But Jonathan, you're amazing, dude. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on today and
Pleasure.
Investing all of this time. Everybody, make sure you go to X and follow. What's your X handle? I don't have it in front of me.
That is J.R. Broadbent. That's my main one. I run a bunch of things like AssembleXOhio and Ohio Rhino Hunters. You'll find me at J.R. Broadbent on X.
J.R. Broadbent on X. Everybody go follow Jonathan at J.R. Broadbent on X, and go check out all of his websites and everything else he's got going on. Jonathan, thank you very much. Stay with me. I'm going to end the live stream. But everybody who's watched and shared this out, thank you very much. I appreciate that. If you've not shared it out, you may redeem yourself now and go ahead and share it out. Thank you all so much. Jonathan, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.